Welcome back to JR Takes. As always, I'm Jonah Hoffman, and alongside me, Ryan Rogers.
Yes, sir.
Got a couple things to discuss regarding the Seahawks this week. We took a look at the competition against the Bears. It did not look great, but we did not. We did get to see our guys up close in person the other day at training camp. It was our first time doing that. Ryan, what was your overall experience and take on what you saw on Sunday?
Yeah, so I've never been to the VMAC before and haven't even actually explored that area too much, even though I've lived in the Northwest basically my whole life, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I'm jealous of professional football players for what they do, but man, being a Seahawk must be pretty damn fun, getting to hang out at that facility. It's just so beautiful there on the water and everything, and it just looks like a lot of fun, and it's a really great experience for the fans to show up to those training camps that they hold open to the public. So I'll definitely be going back in years forward. I don't know why I didn't go before this year, honestly.
Yeah. I thought the experience, too, was pretty smooth. Like, I was kind of surprised at how the bus transporting us to and from wherever we were.
It was hot as hell, but I mean, it worked.
Yeah. The facility being right on the water, I thought that was beautiful. And I didn't think it was going to be as hhot as it was yesterday. I kind of got a farmer's sunburn.
Same. I literally have a really redneck.
Yeah, same here.
But yeah, it's just as far as Seahawks football has been since the last episode. We made some roster cuts following that hideous Bears game. And one of them was Joel. I don't know how to say his last name, but it starts with an I. He was a linebacker, and we actually signed him from the Bears in the offseason, and it seemed like he might be the kind of guy who could be a contributor.
Are you talking about the 5 cuts that we just made?
Yes.
I actually didn't hear about any of the names that we cut. Anyone?
Joel I is the only one that really stuck in my brain.
See, I'd never even heard of that person, so that's fine.
He was, I was thinking maybe not starting, but like a good second stringer special teams guy, because that was his forte coming out of Chicago, was his special teams contributions. But yeah, he missed. I think he might have been the culprit for some of those really big returns the Bears had. But yeah, I was at that preseason game, and getting to watch us in person, it was just a terrible effort all around. I mean, Gino, you can't really even make anything of his performance, because his best throws were dropped mostly in that game. Oddly enough, Pro Football Focus has him as the highest graded quarterback with more than 20 attempts in the league right now.
They come out with some weird ratings. Sometimes I really agree with Pro Football Focus, and then sometimes I'm like, are you guys watching? Who is writing these articles?
Yeah, I really don't get it sometimes. It doesn't make any sense, because I want to say they had Mitchell Trubisky super high one year or something like that. There just seems to be a lot of inconsistencies, but I feel like if it's, when you're watching a game, if a player seems to be doing really well and their Pro Football Focus score is high, you're like, great. But I don't really understand how they do their system, to be honest. For even something like a quarterback, I don't really know how they do it. But all that aside, I don't take away too much from that preseason game against the Bears, because we didn't play most of our starters at all. And by midway through the second quarter, we were hardly playing any at all. I think what was most concerning about that game is just that we don't have very good depth at a lot of these positions. Like, our linebackers do not look good.
No.
I mean, we haven't seen Jordan Brooks play at all, but it's almost like everyone else besides him. And V. Jones has flashed. He's made a couple good plays. But beyond those two, and, Cody Barton is okay. He's probably one of the bottom 5 starting linebackers in the league, but he's passable. I really think that's, we went from having the rock solid future Hall of Famer and Bobby Wagner every year didn't have to worry about the linebacker position. And it's sort of analogous to the quarterback situation. It seems like this year it's, we don't really know. And then maybe there's a guy coming out in the draft next year that they really like, because I'm genuinely surprised they haven't made a move to grab somebody, whether that be a Roquan Smith or there were some notable free agent linebackers we didn't go after either. But yeah, that was the biggest concern to me, was continuing on with poor tackling like we had in the first preseason game. A lot of penalties and the drops.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Roquan Smith. I actually heard, I think this morning, that he is attending Bears practices now and is basically committing to the team, even though he said he wanted a trade.
I think that's kind of just a new age way of contract negotiations, is just be like, I want to trade, like Debo did it.
Yeah.
I don't really put too much stock into that, because I feel like you can just tweet whatever as a player now, and then all of a sudden it's news.
But one thing I wanted to bring up was we got to see Drew Lock compete yesterday, and we've both talked about how it hasn't really been a fair competition between Drew Lock and Geno. And I was listening to some Pete Carroll sound bites last night.
You know, I still need to see him play and need to see him fit in with our guys and all that. He's done really well till now. That opportunity was going to be a big one, even though I knew that the preparation for it wasn't great. You know, just wasn't adequate for the prep that a guy wants for his first chance to start a game. But we'll see how he goes this week, and he'll planning on playing a lot this week.
Dude, well then why didn't you have it more of a actual quarterback competition from the get-go?
I know.
It's been Geno. It's been all Geno, like seemingly 24/7 with the first team. And if you were to put Drew Lock as the starter week 1, everything just seems kind of like last minute for that, which again doesn't make any sense.
It just doesn't really feel like it ever was a competition.
Yeah.
Because the last quarterback competition we had, I remember in camp, Matt Flynn, Tavares Jackson, and Russell Wilson were all kind of like rotating which day they got first team reps from the get-go. And that was at the height of the always compete mantra. But I've noticed this with Pete, with some other positions and some other players in the past. Like it's bothersome to me that Phil Haynes hasn't cracked the starting lineup much in the last couple of years, because his first game he played for us was against the Packers in 2019 in the playoffs, and he looked great. I know he struggled with injuries, but there's a handful of other guys that I'm like, why aren't they getting more snaps? Like Alton Robinson in 2020, like every time he played, he got a sack, but he only got like 100 snaps that whole season or something like that. But yeah, that's the one argument against Pete that I really just tend to agree with these days, is he doesn't seem to actually let a lot of competitions play out, at least from a fan's perspective. Like, I don't understand how you can call this a quarterback competition when one guy has gotten all the first team reps virtually this entire offseason, started the first preseason game, and I'm pretty sure is going to start the third one too against the Cowboys this Friday. I heard
otherwise.
I heard a report out of, I think, Greg Bell from the News Tribune that Geno got all the first team reps again today in their walkthrough. So
interesting.
And what makes that even more noteworthy is Pete said in his press conference yesterday that from this point forward, they're less so looking at depth and reserve players and more so trying to get the starters ready for week 1. And if he says that, then immediately is giving Geno all the first team reps, I'm like, well, this thing's already fucking over for the most part. And I feel like it never even got to be a competition.
Yeah.
And so I'm frustrated with it, to be honest with you, because it just seems like, what was the point of getting him? Like, do they view him as a long-term option that they need to sit? Because I feel like that doesn't actually exist much in the NFL anymore. I mean, do you think Kenny Pickett is still going to be sitting come like week 10 of this season? I don't.
I think he should start from what I've seen from him.
I think he should too.
I think he's kind of similar to the Geno and Drew competition, I feel like we know what Mitchell Trubisky and Mason Rudolph, we know what their ceilings are.
Yeah.
We don't really know what Kenny Pickett's ceiling is, and same deal with Geno and Drew. We absolutely know what Geno's ceiling is. He'll get you a touchdown in the first half, maybe.
Unless you're playing the Urban Meyer-led Jaguars, then he'll whoop ass. But it's like, I feel like Pete Carroll has, because that's the last time he saw Geno start was against the Jaguars last year. And I feel like for some reason, Pete Carroll's like, oh, Geno can be like that every game. Dude, that was a historically bad team that Geno did that against. The other 3 games were bad. There was no consistency or flow in the offense at all. There was 3 and out after 3 and out. And that's how this preseason has been. The guys put up 3 points in like 10 drives with, a lot of that was with some backup receivers. And I don't think Geno has played bad, but I just know the offense doesn't really move when he's in there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, I want to say he was 10 for 18 against the Bears but 3 of those
there was like
passes
5 drops, honestly.
Yeah. But so, yeah, I mean, I guess statistically he's not horrible, but he's not a playmaker. And I keep saying that over and over again. He's not gonna, come up with any big plays. He's not gonna throw the ball downfield. Or
at training camp, I will say he had a nice deep ball to DK down the sideline. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah,
it was a pretty good ball. But no, I'm with you. And the thing is, maybe we all just have this fixation on Drew because he's young and new. But it's just something about the prospect of watching Geno play for the next 4 months is just, I would just describe it as extraordinarily underwhelming.
It would kind of make me feel like Pete is going against his own philosophy as a head coach too. We just talked about it, always compete, and this quarterback competition has not been a fair competition because you've been favoring one side of the 2 quarterbacks. And
yeah.
And if you're trying to compete at the highest level and you're putting Geno Smith out there, then I'm sorry, but I feel like you need to go if if that's what you're trying to preach.
Unless he's doing some 3D chess of intentionally trying to suck this year so we can get a high pick for a quarterback next year, which again, I don't think he's doing that at all.
I don't understand why he would do that given his age.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
So yeah, tanking is not something that I would assume him or John Schneider are trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I don't think tanking is in Pete's DNA, and we've made some moves this offseason that make me think it's not. Like, why would we re-sign DK or Quandre Diggs if we were trying to tank, Mm-hmm. But that's in total contradiction to starting Geno and not trying to get another quarterback and not really giving Drew Lock a chance. Like, those things just, I was fine with us not getting another quarterback if we started Drew, because I think Geno is a good backup, but at least give the young guy a chance to, make some noise this year and see what we got, because we're rebuilding anyways. So I don't know. It doesn't make sense, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
This preseason game on Friday is, I think, Drew's last chance to grab the starting job, because I don't think Pete is going to make a sound decision to the media till maybe September 11th, the day before the preseason game.
Mm-hmm.
Or sorry, the regular season opener. But yeah, I think he really has to throw like 4 touchdowns and like 90% completion percentage or something like that to have a chance.
Which is possible because Dallas, they lose a lot of preseason games too.
Yeah.
So,
I'm worried about that kick returner we're going to be punting to.
Oh, God. He's probably going to get a couple.
Yeah.
I was watching highlights. He had a punt return and a kick return for a touchdown.
Yeah. In one, I mean, that's the kind of statement right there that says, like, I belong on an NFL roster. So good for him. I don't actually know the guy's name, but I saw that stat and highlight. So this is a really good test to see if, we can coach up the guys that we have out there to actually cover some special teams returns, because that's something we're supposed to be good at. We were good at it last year.
Just found it. The guy's name's Cavante Turpin, because the NFL's Instagram had to put his name in their bio because he plays for the Cowboys, and they have to talk about the Cowboys for some. It's in the contract for,
If they don't, then the lead writer just gets fired that day if he doesn't bring up the Cowboys.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty awesome seeing all the players up close, though. I mean, goddamn, Colby Parkinson.
Yeah, so we got to meet Colby Parkinson, kind of Jamal Adams, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, and who's the other guy? Darwin Thompson.
Yeah, Darwin Thompson. He was kind of tiny.
He was a little guy.
I mean, not tiny in the sense. I mean, he's still a little stout. Could run me over.
For sure. We could not tackle him, but I was a good head taller than him. Sure.
He looked like he was probably like 5'7".
Yeah.
Or something like that.
But Colby Parkinson is an absolute tree of a human being. That guy is like 6'8". He could probably play, college basketball somewhere with his height and how jacked he is. If they can ever get that guy to develop as a tight end, he's like a Jimmy Graham type of body. Like, he could seriously make some noise.
Even he could be a top tight end if he can start catching those passes in like the nitty gritty when
it's contested.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also, I don't know if JJ Arcega really has a chance to make the team, but I had a brief conversation with him yesterday. He's a nice guy, so I'm a fan. I hope the best for him.
Yeah, he was super friendly. And I mean, there was a reason why the Eagles took him over DK Metcalf. He's got to have some promise in his game. I mean, I know it hasn't translated to the NFL. I mean, I think he has 16 catches in his career.
Something really bad like that. Yeah. He is a very good blocker though. And I think that the thing is I actually think our wide receiver competition is maybe the most competitive on camp right now. Because think about it. Derek Young, Bo Melton, Freddie Swain, Marquise Goodwin, JJ Arcega-Whiteside. And that's not even to mention the guys that have been here for a little bit, like Penny Hart and Cade Johnson and Cody Thompson. I just named 8 people. None of them are locks to make the roster.
I don't know. Other than DK, Tyler, and I guess D. Eskridge.
He's not going anywhere.
Even though he has injury issues, I mean, he's a second-round pick. We can't just give up on him.
He looked good catching from the jugs machine yesterday. I mean, that's about all I could say about watching him.
Was he a returner? Is that what we got him for, and he just hasn't ever been able to get onto the field?
I thought he was going to be, but I don't think we ever really threw him out there because he got hurt immediately last year. He took one of the biggest helmet-to-helmet hits I saw all season last year, and then the back of his head hit the ground immediately after it. So I knew that was a bad concussion when he got it, but it was so bad he had to see a specialist. He was having vision problems. Mm-hmm. Really unfortunate what's happened with D.
I think concussions overall have just we've taken them a lot more seriously, so they're a lot more unpredictable nowadays.
Yeah,
as they were back in the day. Kyle Lewis on the Mariners got a concussion. He was out for almost 3 weeks. From that injury alone, when it was supposed to be 7 days.
Yeah, I think they used to just be all right, you'll be fine by Tuesday if you get one on Sunday in years past, and now it's no, we need to take these a little more serious and go through some actual strict testing standards to make sure you're okay after one of them. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, he's an older wide receiver for how little NFL experience he has. He's already 25, I'm pretty sure. So they really need him to develop in a hurry to have a return on that investment we had on him.
Yeah, and speaking of our other receivers, one guy that I'll be really bummed if they don't make the team is Derek Young, dude. When we saw him up close when he kneeled on the sidelines, I was like, "Oh my god, this guy he's
absolutely
a monster.
Jacked.
He looks bigger than DK."
Yeah, his lower body is maybe bigger than DK's. I would say it was
insane. I couldn't. The amount of lower bodies that mesmerized me yesterday at camp, I was like, whoa.
You're going to have to make a Grindr account.
Yeah.
Sorry if that was a bad joke. Anyways, moving on. Yeah, Derek and Bo both impressed me at camp yesterday. Bo caught a really, really nice pass down the sideline from Jacob Eason about like 50 yards downfield. Right over Tariq Woolen, too, who's the fastest player on our team. So that must have been... I didn't see the route he ran once he got vertical, but that must have been a pretty good at-the-snap move to get past Tariq, who not a whole lot of people have been getting past in camp, including Marquise and DK, who are 4.3, sub 4.3 type of runners. So
one thing that I noticed was I found myself doing a lot at training camp yesterday was watching individual matchups. So there were some times when I didn't actually see a play fully develop and finish because I was like watching Abraham Lucas go up against whoever was pass
looks
rushing
like
at the time.
a wall of a human being.
He is huge.
We might have found our tackles for the next decade in one draft.
Yeah.
They both looked great. Also, Charles Cross threw his gloves right at us. I kind of didn't want to catch him though, because
we both. We probably both could have walked home with his pair of gloves, but I just felt weird with all those little kids around me, and I didn't want to stiff arm children to get a sweaty glove that I don't really want to touch.
Which you have to do, by the way, if you go to training camp and you want to get DK's signature, be ready to shove some children because they swarm to that guy to get an autograph.
Dude, they were like screaming in each other's ears they weren't even like communicating words. They were just screaming.
Yeah. DK is like one of the Beatles. He's that famous to Seattle folks. So, yeah.
It was pretty funny to see though.
Yeah. Jamal Adams came right up to us and we got a autograph from him, which was pretty cool. So yeah, just training camp experience in general. Like it's really, really, really cool to go down there and just be face to face with some of these guys. I feel like there's not a lot you can take away from practice, just like preseason, because if the defense makes a good play, you're like, oh, sweet. If the offense makes a good play, it's kind of the same reaction. But some notable guys that definitely stood out to me on the defense were 3 cornerbacks, Tariq Woolen, just because he's so tall and so fast.
It was really fun seeing him go up against DK.
Yeah, they've been calling that the Battle of the Transformers, and that's aptly named. Kobe Bryant had a couple nice pass breakups, and a guy we haven't talked a lot about, and it's another silly name in our secondary, but Michael Jackson, he had a couple really nice plays out there too. He's number 30. So I like that we have some good depth at the cornerback position for sure, especially once Trey Brown can get back from that injury he had last year. And
yeah, when is his timetable, do you know?
He's probably going to start the season on the PUP list is my guess, because he had a major injury last year. I think it was his patella tendon that he had a rupture.
God, it's always that.
That sounds like a really painful injury too. But I know he's back to running, so he might be like a month or 2 away, but I think he will play this season. And that's not even to mention Sidney Jones and Artie Burns, who are at the top of the depth chart. They've just had some injuries, so they haven't really been practicing or playing too much. So I think we got a lot of talent in the secondary. Quandre Diggs had a play where if it was in a game, Tyler Lockett would have been on a cart.
I got that on camera, actually.
He came, Tyler Lockett just basically kind of ran an arrow route and caught it, but Quandre Diggs was coming in at like 50 miles an hour, ready to tear his head off, and let up and didn't actually hit him.
That was a Drew Lock throw too, wasn't it?
I think that was a Geno throw. Because I remember, because Geno threw 2 balls to Lockett where he was like crushed immediately, and I was like, why is he trying to kill Tyler Lockett?
Yeah, well.
But yeah, as far as the quarterback competition is concerned, I saw nothing in training camp that would make me think anything differently than what I already thought. It's the way they were doing so many handoffs especially too, that they didn't really get that many downfield throw opportunities while we were there. I think there were only like 4 or 5 deep balls attempted the whole practice, and 3 of them were by Jacob Eason. And when he wants to put zip on it, it's crazy how hard he can throw it. That stood out to me both at the preseason game and at training camp. So he's going to be a practice squad guy. I don't know if he really has much of a chance to develop into a starter ever, but if nothing else, Jacob Eason's throwing ability is like up there with the best in the league, honestly. So that was interesting to see.
Yeah. One thing that I forgot to bring up or I wanted to talk about briefly was, I guess, Charles Cross, even though he had the 4 penalties in the preseason game against Chicago, he didn't even know who Robert Quinn was.
I know.
And that was who he was going up against. Like, I just thought that was kind of weird because Robert Quinn, he's not like the best D-end in the league.
He had 18 sacks last year.
Yeah, 18. I think it was 18 and a half or something like that. But yeah,
we haven't had a player with that many in God ever. Yeah,
but I just thought that was kind of weird that don't you watch film before even preseason games on who your opponents are going to be and who you're going up against, like one-on-one matchups? I just thought that was surprising that he had no idea who Robert Quinn was, because, I know who that is, and I'm not an NFL player. I remember he used to be on the Rams. I don't know how long he's been with the Bears, but he used to kind of be a thorn in our side.
Yeah, he's been around for, I want to say, a good decade now.
At least since the Jeff Fisher era of the Rams.
Yeah, absolutely. So. But he's always been a really good pass rusher. So it was funny. I saw that article too that Charles didn't know who that was, but he didn't allow any pressures. He actually hasn't allowed a pressure this whole preseason, that makes me feel really good. Yeah. And both of them have looked good run blocking as well. And that was the concern with them. So I don't honestly really care how well this season goes, because the fact that we have 4 picks in the first 2 rounds next year has us set up so well to make some noise in 2023 and beyond. But the fact that we got, 2 tackles that look legit, a secondary that looks legit, and a couple edge rushers that I'm excited about as well. Boye wasn't practicing. He's got I think it was a shoulder issue, but it's not a long-term injury. Seahawks are really banged up with minor injuries right now. Yeah.
Another lineman that I forgot about until I saw him at practice yesterday was Stone Forsythe. He looks like a wall of a man too, and I'm kind of surprised that he can't translate his game into maybe becoming a considerable starter.
Yeah, so every time he's played, his pass blocking has been pretty good. I think he's just a little too slow to get to the second level fast enough in the run game to get some of those plays where they pull a tackle or they're asked to go out and block downfield on a linebacker or something like that.
Which is, I think that's, I always assumed that if you're an offensive lineman, you want to run block because it's when you get to maul people and go forward rather than backward. And so I guess it doesn't mean everyone succeeds in that style of play, but
yeah, it's it seems counterintuitive because a lot of linemen come out good at run blocking, not good at pass blocking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Stone is a really good second string tackle to have, but yeah, he's not going to beat out Lucas or Charles Cross. Those guys both look like they might be Pro Bowlers in a year or two.
I know. I'm really excited. Just
how weird is it to have a line that you're like, this looks pretty good on paper.
Look, because I remember the Cowboys from the 2014 season. Their line was so good, and they ran all over us. And I was like,
it was demoralizing.
I wanted
to play
that
against
for
those
our
Cowboys teams. Yeah,
and we hadn't had pretty much since Max Unger was traded. Our line has been pretty irrelevant. So it's nice to have 2 top prospects in that position where we can, maybe hope for a Pro Bowl offensive line in the upcoming seasons. And
I think we are top 10 quarterback and linebacker and an edge rusher away from being something. I also think the Seahawks need to maybe invest a first round pick in a receiver or a second round pick again, because they need a legit option at wide receiver 3. And I think if Eskridge doesn't become that by the end of this year, they maybe just need to see him as a rotational wide receiver 4 guy and then move on and get someone else, because it is like, look at the Rams last year. And once they got Odell Beckham Jr., you know, they had Robert Woods before he got injured, Cooper Kupp, that other guy, what's his name? I can't remember his name. They have another receiver that's like pretty dang good.
Allen Robinson?
Well, they have him now, but last year when they won the Super Bowl.
Robert Woods?
Not Robert Woods. He's the young guy.
Oh, Van Jefferson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's pretty good too. I think that is critical to going on a run, because when you like have 2 really good options, the defense has enough pieces to kind of game plan for that. But when you have like 4, it becomes a whole lot harder.
And right now, specifically, I think the NFL is trying to adopt their team to go after that model, so to speak. Like, you had both the Super Bowl teams, the Bengals and the Rams. Both of those teams had quite the surplus at receiver.
Yeah.
Especially the Bengals. I mean,
and a good pass catching tight end as well.
Yeah. So
I think, I honestly haven't been very impressed with Noah Fant from what I've seen so far. It's just preseason. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it, but I'm hoping he can, because he has a lot of physical abilities and talent, but I'm hoping he can be a legit receiving option for us this year.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's going to take Eskridge to step up for us to really have a good offense this year, because I think we're going to have a good running game, and I think we're going to run the ball a lot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot. Maybe much more so than we even did in years prior, just because of who we have under center.
Sure.
Which I'm fine with, because if it's working, keep doing it. It's just the negative 2-yard runs and the 1-yard runs over and over again on first and second down that just drive me crazy.
Yeah.
Play calling. Because when you second and long and third and long just make the drive so much less likely to succeed.
Especially with the way Pete Carroll runs an offense, 9 times out of 10, if we're third and long, he's just going to run the ball. Or
Travis Homer's going to get a screen and then he's going to get 8 yards, but it's 3rd and 14, so we're punting. Yeah. Anyways, so I think there's a lot to be encouraged about so far in the preseason training camp era. But man, I'm ready for September 12th. I'm pretty done and over preseason at this point, to be honest with you. But what are you looking at going into the Cowboys game on Friday?
Obviously the Drew Lock play is what I'm excited to see again, because we were deprived of that in the Bears game. I want him to succeed. I mean, it's not like I'm rooting for Geno to fail. I just think if we go with him as an option, we're waving the towel before the season even starts.
I'm with you there.
Because I don't see us winning more than 4 games with him at quarterback. And even that is, I think, is being generous. I think we will get swept in our division if we start him at quarterback. I mean, do you see Geno taking down the Cardinals, the Rams, or the Niners even one time?
I mean, logically, no. The only reason why I think our floor is 6 wins this year is just because Pete Carroll's never had a team, even going back to his days as the Jets coach, that won less than 6 games. So I don't really see that happening now. But, I mean, on paper, yeah, there's not a whole lot of games I expect us to be favored in.
Well, and I think some of it, I mean, I don't know Pete Carroll, and I don't want to, call him out or anything, but some of it might have to do with, arrogance on his own philosophy, and maybe he needs to take a look in the mirror.
We will find out very soon if that's the case, because I think he's put himself in a position where if things go decent this year, and, I don't think playoffs are required for us to be decent, but if you can tell the team's developing and we go 7-10, 6-11, 8-9, somewhere in there, I think you can make a case that okay, Pete still got it. let's use this draft capital we got next year, and we are going to have a shit ton of cap space next season because of the way we have I think 18-20 million in surplus right now that we're just going to roll over to next season, and the cap is going to go way up. So anyways, but yeah, I think if we're 3-14, there's a chance he gets fired.
Yeah, well,
and that kind of blows up the whole rebuild because you're going to have a new coach in that maybe is in love with Drew Lock, or maybe hates everyone. I don't know. When you get another person's opinion on personnel in, the whole depth chart is subject to change, and the whole process of the rebuild is, kind of washed. So,
and not to mention, you look at all the other NFC head coaches around the league with guys like Shanahan and the Packers head coach
LaFleur.
Yeah, and what is the who is the Sean McVay, and even guys in the AFC like the Bengals head coach Zach Taylor, Andy Reid, all these offensive minded coaches have the best teams.
Yeah,
and I'm starting to wonder the game is geared towards the offense and favors the offense,
and it continues to sway more that direction every season.
And I'm wondering, I've been wondering this since we lost that playoff game to the Rams when we won our division a couple years ago. Is Pete's scheme and philosophy being outdated? And I mean, I know we changed to a 3-4, and only time can answer this question. But it really makes me worry. If he only wins 3 or 4 games, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, wouldn't be surprised if he did get fired. And quite frankly, I don't know if I would necessarily mind.
No, I wouldn't, because that'd be 2 bad losing seasons in a row. My only thing is what we did this offseason, I really liked 96% of it, was stoked about it.
Yeah.
And I would hate to just restart that and move on from a lot of these players that I like. And some of these coaches we have on the staff too. So I got to think, though, Pete understands that if we suck ass this year, he might be done coaching. He's got to have that level of self-awareness, because he even brought it up. I think it was after we lost to maybe the Steelers game. Someone was asking about the impact of Russell Wilson being gone, and he was saying he basically said, if Russ hadn't been here so long, I might not have been here so long. Mm-hmm. He said basically that statement there. So I think he understands that you got to win in the NFL if you're going to keep your job. So, because he's been fired from 2 other head coaching positions.
Right.
But I do think in years past, his overconfidence, ego might have caused us to not go far in the playoffs. The 2020 season, the 2018 season against the fucking Cowboys, where we ran the ball 60 times and didn't throw it at all. And then when we did, scored immediately, but didn't have enough time. That was one of the most frustrating Pete Carroll games ever. So I'm with you. I think anything under 6 wins, maybe it's time to move on. But I don't think we're going to be that bad.
I certainly hope not. And we are probably in the next upcoming episode probably going to redo our, mock win-loss for the season.
I'm thinking we do that first week of September, yeah.
Yeah. Because obviously if you've listened to the episode, Ryan and I were a little bit in the honeymoon stage of the draft and thought that we were going to win all these games with all these new faces, and the preseason's kind of given us a hard reality check on that fact. I just don't really see us winning. I think I had us winning 8 games, going 8-9, beating the Bucks in Germany. I don't know what I was thinking, but that is not going to happen. I'm sorry.
I had 9-8 and beating the Bucks in Germany, so I feel dumb. But I think something 7-10 is probably the ceiling, and 6. I just don't see us being any having many more wins than 7 and many less than 6 is my prediction. But we'll go through that again. We got a game coming up this Friday, final preseason game. Hopefully we see a lot of Drew Lock and not a lot of Geno Smith, because good God, I've seen enough of that for one preseason. So that's all I had for this one, Jonah. Do you have any more thoughts?
No, that pretty much wraps it up for me. Yeah.
All right, well, we will probably catch up with you guys again Sunday night after this weekend's slate of preseason games. Once again, I'm Ryan Rogers.
And as always, I'm Jonah Hoffman. Have a good one.